Hello everybody, this is Rob, and today on R&B Reviews, not too long ago I announced that I was going to be trying and reviewing a lot of Batman movies to tie in with the new Dark Knight Rises movie, so I decided to start this off. I'm going to go back to the beginning, to an era of the Batman movies that I think has become a little bit forgotten now. Batman actually made his movie debut in the 1940s. He appeared in two movies. There's Batman from 1943 and Batman and Robin from 1949. And these weren't really feature films, they were movie serials. Well, think of it this way. Do you guys remember on Saturday morning on the cartoons and live action shows would have a show, and then occasionally there might be a two-parter where part one ended on a cliffhanger and it said to be continued and you have to tune in next week to see what happened next? That's what a movie serial is, but better yet, think of it as a 12-part or a 15-part episode instead of a two-parter. That's basically what a movie serial was. They were made between 1912 and 1956, and they were very popular as Saturday movie things for matinees for kids. What happened was little kids would go on Saturdays, they'd pay a nickel and they'd see some cartoons, maybe a feature film, and of course an episode, a part of their movie serials, like with their favorite superheroes like Batman, Superman, Captain Marvel, Flash Gordon, and they would always end on a cliffhanger where the hero looked like he was going to be in trouble, and everybody would come back the following week to see what happened to their favorite superhero.
Robin now carry on alone? Who is making a getaway in this speeding car? See the startling answers in Robin's Route, Chapter 11 of Batman and Robin, at this theater.
The first one was made in 1943, Batman, and he was played by Lewis Wilson, and Robin was played by Douglas Cross. So Lewis Wilson was the first ever Batman. And the villain in this movie serial was not the Penguin or the Joker or Catwoman. It was actually a scientist named Professor Daka. Now, as you can tell from the year 1943, we were in World War II, and the plot is that Professor Daka is actually a Japanese scientist spy who is going to try and help Emperor Hirohito take over the United States, and one of the tools he has is a gamma ray gun, as well as this machine that turns people into zombies, or just human beings that do whatever Professor Daka says. I know it kind of sounds offensive and perhaps racist, but this was 1943. A lot of major movie studios were making movies to try like this to try to keep the morale up with the American public. The movie serial does look cheap, as I mentioned. I mean, Batman and Robin's costume does look homemade, and the sets I recognize from the sets of Three Stooges movies, but then again, low budget. They probably used existing sets that were already on the lot. There's no Batmobile here. Bruce Wayne and Batman actually share the same car, which is a black Cadillac, and Alfred actually has to chauffeur both of them without anybody noticing. They would probably go into an alley whenever they see trouble, and then they turn into Batman and Robin like that. But this serial, I think, had a very nice music score to accompany the movie. And I think Wilson made Bruce Wayne a very good, happy-go-lucky, laid-back sort of character, and he injects some humor into this part. But I kind of found him to be a bland Batman, but I will say this, he does a good job at creating two completely different personas for the character, Bruce Wayne and Batman. They're completely different. Robin was not really interesting here except to tag along and help Batman out. But Batman in this movie, he's not just an action hero. He does use his brains to come up with plans and to figure clues out. And like Sherlock Holmes, he and Dick Grayson carry disguises with them, and they create different personas without being noticed by the henchmen. I mean, Wilson is very good in these parts where he has to disguise as like a gangster to infiltrate a henchman meeting and stuff like that. He was very good here. And Professor Daka was played by at that time, a very well-known character actor named J. Carrol Naish. He had a long career in movies, on radio, on the stage, on television. A really, really long career. And he, like I mentioned, his character is offensive now, but it was very relevant in the 1940s. But unlike other movie serial villains from the time, he has thought out on why he wanted to take over the U.S. He really believes in his cause, that the U.S. is just corrupt, which a lot of people now might say, and they may find that relevant now.
I am Dr. Daka, humble servant of His Majesty Hirohito, heavenly ruler and prince of the rising sun. By divine destiny, my country shall destroy the democratic forces of evil in the United States to make way for the new order. An order that will bring about the liberation of the enslaved people of America. Each of these men, dishonored by your corrupt form of government, is a specialist in his line.
Alfred's in this movie, like I said, he's mostly used for comedy relief without being annoying, and he he plays a role in helping the heroes work out. Now, the serial has plenty of action, and it moves at a very good pace. And I kind of found myself watching these episodes back to back to back. You know, I think I just kept wanting to know what happened next. You know, it was well written, and it was not boring. And, you know, there was some suspense, and, you know, and a lot of the supporting characters, especially the henchmen, had personalities, including one that tries to stand up to Daka at one point. You know, I mean, I just couldn't wait into every single time, you know. There's a lot of movie serials where they begin well and they end well, but it's always dead in the center. Not this one. This one moved very well, and it kept me interested. The female lead, Linda Page, she's played by Shirley Patterson. She's just another damsel in distress that gets in, screams, and stuff like that. And the fight scenes, they kind of all looked the same to me. It made the film a little bit repetitive, but if somebody might yell, "It's the Batman!" and then pow, fight begins. It also kind of seems a bit preposterous to turn people into zombies, but the actors make their characters believe in them very, very convincingly. So, the 1943 serial, you may have to watch through the eyes of somebody from that time period, but I think it's very well made, and it was fun and enjoyable.
They're gone.
What's happened to Morton? You're clever, Batman, but not as clever as the Wizard.
Now, the sequel from 1949 is Batman and Robin, and it is on DVD too, but I didn't buy it because I still have a video copy that still works. But this one had a completely different cast and a new producer. His name was Sam Katzman, who was actually, for those of you that know your movie history, he was a producer at a low-budget studio called Monogram, and Monogram was known to shoot movies, feature films, in 5 days on a shoestring budget. And unfortunately, it does show in this one. Let's see, Robert Lowery is Batman and Johnny Duncan is Robin. And we see Commissioner Gordon for the first time in this one, and the bat signal is used for the first time. And the new villain is the Wizard. He's actually a hooded character, and you have to try and figure out who he is. And the female lead is Vicky Vale, who you might recognize later on from 1989 Batman movie. She's a more stronger and more independent movie than her predecessor from 1943. This serial starts out well, showing Gotham City in chaos until Batman comes along and fixes the city up. But in the middle, it feels like the serial is struggling to fit everything into 15 chapters. I mean, this probably could have worked better as a 12-part serial. But this movie has a lot of plots and characters coming and going, and it just feels padded. The serial has a better looking and a bigger Batcave, and Wayne Manor is a suburb instead of a scary building up the hill like in 1943. But of course, like after World War II, suburbs were, you know, booming everywhere. And the serial, I think this serial is a little less dated because the villain is not as dated like Professor Daka was. And the costumes and the fights, I think, were better in this one. And the film had more of a mystery atmosphere, maybe not as suspenseful as the other serial. The actors here, I thought, were pretty stiff, and the movie felt rushed. Again, that might have been because of Sam Katzman's background. He produced movies that were shot very quickly. You know, you brought the actors in, you did a take, move on, and you did it quickly. And I think that's why this movie kind of doesn't capture momentum like the 1943 serial does. The plot is a little bit more ludicrous, involving a stolen machine that can control cars in Gotham City, and everything in this movie looks a lot cheaper. There's also too many coincidences just to keep the plot moving along. You do get to guess who the villain really is with a lot of suspects, but it just makes the villain not have much of a personality because he's wearing a mask and you don't know who he is. Daka wanted to take over the U.S., so why does the Wizard want this? You know, it doesn't really go that way. The film, I'll admit, this film is less static. There's a lot of moving camera moves, and Robin is given much more to do here than he was in the 1943 serial, but to me, it just wasn't as well made as the 1943 one. It had its good points, but sometimes it was just hard for me to sit through it. You know, I couldn't do what I did with the last movie serial and watch it in a row. I had to break it up this time around, so it's not as good as the 1943 one, but if you're a Batman fan and you're watching all the Batman movies, you probably want to at least check this out at one point. So those are my reviews of the two Batman movie serials from the 1940s. They're both available on DVD if you want to give them a shot. I recommend them. I think the 1943 one is better, but, you know, that's up to you. There's some people that will defend this 1949 one. So, thank you very much for watching, and please leave your comments. And if you enjoyed this video and you're new, please subscribe. We got all different kinds of movie videos, reviews on this channel. So